Beyond.
Welcome, everybody, to Podcast Beyond, episode 487. Every week I have to look at that number. How's it going, everybody? I'm Max Scoville, and I'm joined by Brian Altano.
Hello.
Marty Sleva.
Yes.
And Dead Air. That's right, Dead Air's here again. Yeah, so we've got like a weird kind of skeleton crew this week, just the three of us, and we've also got some news, kind of, but I'll be honest, it's kind of a sparse show, so stick with us. There's some rumors about Insomniac Spider-Man game coming out in 2017. Marty reviewed Yooka-Laylee, and Drawn to Death is out in the wild, but none of us could play it because of server stuff, so without further ado, let's get down to business.
You know who knows business? Daily Bugle's Peter Parker.
I think he's like a freelancer, though. I don't know if he actually gets to say that he's...
Yeah, I guess he takes a lot of money out of his taxes.
Yeah, so basically, there was a... How is this just coming up now?
Yeah, so it was weird. There was at the end of the year last year, there was an episode of the Big Marvel Show, which is an official Marvel-sanctioned show, and Ryan Panagos, who's the vice president and executive director of Marvel's digital media group, was mentioning all the exciting stuff that's going on in 2017, and he said including Insomniac Spider-Man game at the end of the year, which was weird because, you know, obviously the game was revealed with a really cool teaser trailer last year on stage. We know it's a PS4 exclusive, and nothing else has been said about that game since.
No, that's like a snitch on the level of like Amazon France.
Yeah.
Like some retail listing.
Yeah.
Also, how did it take us like 4 months to find...
It just bubbled up on Reddit.
Okay.
All of a sudden. And so there was this huge thread like, oh my God, Marvel confirmed it. And then Insomniac was just like, no, it's not on Twitter.
And everyone's just like, damn
Don't
it,
say
Reddit.
that. Well, and so we don't know if... Again, this is a Insomniac being like, no, that was just misinformation, totally not coming out this year. Or if that was a, no, we don't comment on rumors or speculation because maybe the big E3 reveal is a gameplay trailer and then it's out in November or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, that would be really cool. I'd be so happy if we got a Spider-Man game this fall. Like that'd be such, and it makes sense, obviously, because we've got Homecoming coming out and it's not a full-blown movie tie-in, but... Seems smart. It'll probably be hitting like DVD Blu-ray around that time.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, it seems quick just because it's like, well, it was revealed last year and we haven't seen any gameplay, you know, other than that sort of concept footage. But if this was the team that developed Sunset Overdrive, that game came out 3 years ago. Like, This is the core Insomniac team. And so at this point, you're like, yeah, this game could be done.
So yeah, that's the sort of fascinating thing. It's like I'd love to know eventually when this game's out in the wild or even leading up to it to find out how they got the license, how all that side, the legal side of it all came together. I know like legal mumbo jumbo is incredibly boring, but something with Spider-Man is kind of interesting to me because he gets bounced around all over the place. Like there are 9 different hands in that pot at any given moment, which sounds like a Spider-Man villain.
Oh, old potty 9 hands? Hands out of my pot, dude.
So yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if they started with a sort of design doc of like, here's what a Spider-Man game could look like, and they pitched it, or they had something that was sort of like, you know, that was that fluid and quick and sprawled out in terms of like, here's the way you get around a city in this kind of game, which is obviously something that they're good at doing. So that would honestly help me understand more how closer this thing is to actually coming out. Like if we knew they got the license 2 years ago, 3 years ago, then I'd be like, oh, there's a significant chance this game can come out this fall.
I mean, it is a tangled web, pun intended. But like the fact that you've got Sony, who owns the movie rights to Spider-Man. You've got Disney, who owns Marvel, which owns Spider-Man proper. This is a Sony exclusive. I don't know where this falls. This
is Sony exclusive, but obviously Insomniac is not a first-party studio because they made Sunset Overdrive, which was an Xbox game.
And there was that quote last week about how the movie thing might be a 2-picture deal for now.
Yeah. So that's another entire headache. I think this is officially like formally nothing to do with the movie. Like I don't think this is an MCU thing one bit.
Yeah.
But because of the weird kind of like who owns which company and who's attached to which thing, and I mean, I think Insomniac is pretty much just doing a kind of 1, 2, 3 not it with that announcement. Because I mean, there are which of these are publicly traded? You know, it's like you get into like, you know, stock options and all that, and it gets weird with like.
Oh sure, I can only imagine when you're dealing with Disney and Sony and, you know, first parties.
Yeah, and I think the reason I bring up the movie thing is because, like, depending on how little, and we assume not at all, this ties into the film.
I think they've said straight up it does not.
Right. So are they allowed to interpret the Vulture, for example, who, spoilers, is the villain in the new Spider-Man movie? I mean, like, how much of that are they allowed to take in their own direction?
It's interesting because I moderated the Telltale panel at PAX, which focused a lot on the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which is clearly taking at least aesthetic cues from the movie, but it's not the movie. It's not the it's the characters, but it doesn't have anything to do with Volume 1 or Volume 2.
Did they say at all like this is where the story fits between those two things?
It doesn't.
It's just
it's an original story that's inspired by a hodgepodge of Guardians things from over the past decade.
That's awesome.
What's so funny though is that Guardians, I mean, that's a comic that's been around since like the 60s.
Yeah.
So there's so many different interpretations, and there's characters who were, I mean, if you've been reading since the beginning, you think like, oh, like the original Guardians lineup, there are characters who don't show up, until 20, 30 years down the road who are in the movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think they kind of almost have to lean into what people are familiar with Guardians, but with Spider-Man, it's different because like, I mean, with all the games we've always seen, they've always been like great about throwing in random villains, and they also work so well as boss fights. So I'm really excited on that front.
Almost more so than like any other superhero. Like everyone is like, oh, I could totally picture the mechanics behind a Dr. Octopus fight or Vulture or Shocker.
What's funny though is we've gotten a Vulture in, was it Amazing Spider-Man or not? Oh, Spider-Man 2, the PS2 one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember there was a boss battle where you were like grappling on him as he was flying around the city.
It's always so funny with that because like that was a movie tie-in. So conceivably, the Vulture you saw in that is sort of like the movie approved version of that, but we've never seen him on the actual big screen.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm interested to see where this goes because if this does launch this year, we found out about this game last E3?
Yeah, so it was about 9 months ago,
and it's gone completely radio silent since, right? Not a single image, teaser, trailer, logo, nothing like that. Just we got what we got that day.
Yeah,
it's been 9 months, and here we are now with speculation based on a quote from 4 months ago that was buried in an interview somewhere.
Based on that, and then based on the fact that you're like, well, if this was the Sunset Overdrive team, they would have had 3 years in development, which is a long time. That's pretty much what a game is nowadays. And it's also interesting, just we don't know what Sony's first-party lineup this fall is. Like Microsoft's been very adamant, they're going to have a Forza game and Crackdown and Sea of Thieves and State of Decay. We don't know. Like we know of all these Sony games like Days Gone and like Death Stranding and Last of Us 2. We know the Uncharted DLC is this year.
Right. Yeah.
And like that's the only thing we know for sure. But like, are we going to get Spider-Man and God of War this fall? Like it feels like Sony need to have something this fall, and they can't just rely on like, well, we're going to be the place to get exclusive Destiny DLC, and this is we're aligning ourselves with Red Dead 2 and Battlefront.
Which I think they're going to do a great job of doing, but I think you're totally right in that we really have, and this paints a bigger picture for that, we really have no idea what we're going to be playing on PS4 this fall.
And it's really exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting to be at this point in the year and be like, I mean, I feel like at this point, normally we've gotten like a bunch of leaks out of Ubisoft about what's coming. We've heard like rumors about Assassin's Creed and whatnot, but I mean, I'd really love it if the big kind of gimmick for games this year at E3 is, and it's coming out this fall.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Actually, not we hope, and then it comes out in February. Like that's I mean that's something we've been talking about for ages. I think that Last of Us 2 is definitely not coming out this year.
I can't imagine both Uncharted DLC and Last of Us 2.
Oh God!
So of those games I mentioned, that and Death Stranding feel like the two that are like, no way it's this year.
No, definitely not. I don't even feel like God of War is this year.
Yeah. I feel like of the 3 games, so of Spider-Man, Days Gone, and God of War, I think one of them will be this fall.
I feel like Days Gone is this fall.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one we saw, obviously, the most of last year. We saw 2 demos at E3.
Yep. That one feels like it's the most ready for the limelight.
Yeah. Do we know about Knack 2 yet? Is that this fall?
That's a good point, too.
I feel like it makes sense for them to have, especially at this point, you've got a kids game, a teen game, and an adult game.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man is kind of the sort of all ages, get everyone on board. It makes sense for this year because, again, it is timely. Like, people are going to be talking about Spider-Man.
You've also got stuff like Final Fantasy VII, which I believe they said we're just not going to see for a long time.
Yeah. Kingdom Hearts.
Shenmue, which literally is a logo.
Yeah. Hey, I saw some like concept footage of a pond. So there's at least one koi pond in there.
Ponds confirmed.
Yeah.
There's Media Molecules Dreams, which, again, like...
What is that?
Where is that? A lot of questions there.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, like, it's less a roadmap that Sony has and more of like, here's all the cool stuff you'll be playing in the next 5 years. You're like, well, which ones? Like, let's start staggering these. Like how when Marvel does, like, hey, here's our slate of movies, and so we know, oh, this one's there. A year later, we're gonna get this. A year later, we're gonna get this.
Yeah, it's so bizarre to see a timeline, circling back to Marvel, where they lay out, and DC's doing it now too, where they're just like, here's the next 3 years. Like, we know the next few years of Star Wars stuff, basically. But with Sony first party stuff, it's still like we know they're all making it. We don't know when any of it's landing, and I think that like. The weird thing about PlayStation that makes it different than any other platform is I really think that it stands on the legs of third-party stuff all throughout the year when Sony isn't there with the exclusives. And when they are, it becomes the best system ever made.
Horizon, yeah.
But the problem is if you take all that stuff away, you have Red Dead DLC, you have probably Call of Duty, you know, early access to maps or something. All the deals they'll whittle away.
We know the Destiny, all the expansions are coming first to PS4.
Yep. I mean, just in terms of install base, that's logical, right? But where does this stuff land with first party? Like, how are they going to really sell up the PS4 Pro this fall? How are they going to sell up PSVR, which I think is like starting to whimper down now and has a great chance at like. I think that if you look at the story, the arc of that, like it started really strong. It was impossible to find. It was a bunch of real cool, weird games at launch. And now it's kind of quiet, radio silent. People were probably doing what they're doing with the Switch, where they're like watching to see how well it sold it before developing or porting stuff to it.
So I know I've heard anecdotally, and again, I don't know if this is 100% true, but that it's just below 1 million sold right now. And I feel like when they do hit 1 million, that'll be the big. This is 1 million sold, and which I assume is better than Oculus Vive.
Well, there's a couple pockets of really cool PS4 or PSVR games coming throughout the rest of the year that we know about that we played at PSX and stuff like that, but none of them are really enough to propel this thing to 2 million, 3 million. So I'm hoping like they start rolling out the big guns with all that. Like, I think what's tricking us right now is that we're in such a busy time of year games-wise, surprisingly out of nowhere, and we're expecting so much to keep that momentum going, but it might actually go quiet for a little bit, and especially with somebody like with Sony as the first party, I think they might just be quiet until.
I think that's smart. I think it's really good for them to be like, here's a kind of a long range tease of what you're getting from a Sony platform, but they also don't want to kind of overwhelm you and tire you out of these things. Like I like the idea of getting like a little bit of a tease of Spider-Man or of God of War or Death Stranding or whatever, and then it just going quiet until we're close to release.
Well, and they want to avoid, I mean, obviously like a Last Guardian scenario, but also like, you know, Persona just came out today. Everyone's stoked for it. The game's great. Like listen to last week's episode and hear Andrew and Zach gush about it. But there's those images, the official Atlas and Sony images of Persona 4 or Persona 5 coming to PS3 in winter of 2014. Everyone's circulating those images because that was a real thing that existed. And like no one wants to be like, this game's definitely coming out here and definitely coming out on this console.
I think it's crazy. I mean, it's also like you look at this time of year and I think most people, if you only have a PS4, you probably just platinumed Horizon, right? That took you 70 hours. You rolled right into that in a Persona. Maybe you played some Neo before that, maybe some Nier in the middle of that.
There's like Injustice
you're busy.
And Prey are coming out in the next couple weeks.
You're busy.
No shortage of games. Anyway, we're all excited about all these things. I really hope we get a Spider-Man this year. It's real good.
I do too.
Especially if the movie's really good. If like the movie's good and then all of a sudden we get a good game, we're like, all right, this is like this is it.
The movie's gonna be great. You can watch it in the trailer. The entire thing's there.
There you go. Anyway, speaking of movies and things you can watch in their entirety, IGN is doing a Fate of the Furious red carpet live stream that is happening Saturday, April 8th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. That's on everything that we do. It's youtube.com/IGN, IGN.com, twitch.tv/IGN, twitter.com/IGN. Really just all of the things. So if you like the cars and the friends who ride in the cars as a family of car people, check it out.
And Terry's going to be hosting it. And she was on the show recently.
That's right. Good. She'll be talking to all the stars of that movie, the people behind that movie. It's really, really cool. It's like what we did for the XXX thing. It's
cars and stars.
Together at last.
All right. So anyway, Yooka-Laylee. Marty, you reviewed it.
Yes,
and you're a big fan of the what is it, that bird and the bear, and now it's a gecko and a bat or whatever.
Well, so what's the gecko that can change different colors? It's that man.
A chameleon.
A chameleon. A chameleon.
How did you know that?
Yeah.
What? Oh, kind of a herpetologist, if you know what I mean.
Chameleon?
No, a chameleon.
Chameleon.
Oh, when you say it like that, I got it.
Okay. So Yooka-Laylee came out. Weird. Obviously, it's the crowdfunded Playtonic 3D character platformer. That is a bunch of former Rare people. I was very excited about it because Banjo is one of my favorite games of all time. This game is good. I gave it a 7. It is good. The internet has wildly different opinions on this game.
The internet is in the audience or the reviewers in general?
So far the reviewers, because the game's not out for a week.
Yeah, so. I was going to just run through a quick rundown of some of the reviews because they're really all over the place. GameSpot, 6 out of 10. Polygon, 5.5 out of 10. Push Square, 6 out of 10. Sixth Access, 7 out of 10. Very hard name to say.
Sixth Access, my favorite.
Gamerside, no score / mixed. Game Informer 8 out of 10,
Yeah.
Critical Hit 6 out of 10, Dark Zero 8 out of 10, Reloading 8.2 out of 10, Destructoid 8 out of 10. So
Jim Sterling 2 out of 10.
hey, hold on, things are looking up for for fans of Marooners Rock. 9 out of 10 over there.
Did you say that name right?
Yes.
Marooners?
Game Reactor 8 out of 10, Guardian 4 out of 5. That's just a sampling so far. So I can't remember the last time I've seen such a spread on a
which is interesting.
Yeah. So what do you think? Where do you think that's falling? Is it an age thing? Do you think it's like modern gamers are less in tune to those weird, quirky, open, mapless, platforming collectathon games that we played, whereas like younger gamers maybe want something like a little more straightforward?
Yeah, like I don't know. That's really interesting because like I replay Banjo-Kazooie almost every year. We replayed it like straight through on Christmas the other year and got everything in it without looking at a guide. So like I still love those fundamental design decisions. My thing with this is it's lacking that first party layer of polish that stuff like Mario and Ratchet and Banjo had, and it really does feel like, you know, they made this game on a relatively small budget when you take into account that, yeah, they made a ton of money on Kickstarter, but a giant 3D game built from the ground up.
And it's also
cheap.
It's on multiple platforms.
And it's going to be on everything under the sun. Yeah. And that some of that like corner cutting kind of comes across in that there are only 5 worlds in the games, which I think the original Banjo had a dozen. You know, if you look at the Mario games, they're always well over a dozen.
So by worlds, you mean like an actual big playable level?
There's a hub and then 5 levels. And the way they get around this is that you can pay to unlock new levels, or you can pay to pay as an in-game currency. There's
okay, got it. You scared me for a second.
But then each level can be expanded and pretty much doubles in size, which is cool in theory, but in execution doesn't really work for some of them because sometimes they get a little too big and lose a lot of their identity.
Right.
Like I would have liked 10 different levels with different aesthetics as opposed to 5 big ones with similar aesthetics.
I feel like even building the geometry of the second half of those stages and then reskinning them with like fire or
exactly.
like night.
Yeah.
Like that would have shaken it up a little bit.
And one of the big problems is that one of the levels takes place in a casino and it's just a bad level. It's a flat, bland, uninteresting level where most of the challenges are like slot machines. And slot machines aren't
like
fun.
A realistic casino.
I mean, that's the thing. It's just like a realistic casino. You get
Does it
lost
smell like
in it.
cigarettes.
Yeah,
you don't know what time it is.
exactly.
But the brunch is free, so whatever.
And so that's legitimately just a fifth of the game is not good, which kind of sucks. And then there's
rough.
some camera problems. There's some control problems. But when the game is good, the game totally scratches that itch of playing Banjo, of playing Ratchet.
Can I ask you about the camera problems real quick? Like what like get into the
to the nitty gritty.
of that.
So my thing with a camera, pretty much any camera since Mario 64, is that a good camera in a 3D game is one that you literally never think of.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like an unsung hero. It's like no one ever compliments a good camera because a good camera stays out of the way.
It's like the base expectation these days is that a camera is going to be great.
Yeah, totally.
It's not something you have to babysit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Exactly,
equivalent of editing in movies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you don't notice it. Whereas with this, a lot of times when you get into close quarters geometry, the camera will get stuck in a wall, or you'll be like, well, I want to look over here, and it just won't. It can't.
So it'll like lock up vertically or something like that?
Yeah, it's
that's
not
kind
like
of a pain.
not like unplayable at all. Like it's just noticeably frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once that happens enough and it pulls you out of the experience enough, that just gets, a little tiresome.
Okay, so I want to just stop for a minute. I feel like we're being just kind of negative on this. And
Yeah.
again, you liked it.
Yeah, I gave it a 7, which is good.
I mean, that's in some circles that's considered the most hateful thing
Yes,
you can
that
say.
is, yeah.
7 out of 10.
It's hate speech. Yeah.
But no, I think that with the weird kind of the spread of review scores, something worth pointing out is also the age of the reviewer and kind of their level of expertise, because there is that kind of, I mean, I grew up on we grew up on like 2D stuff primarily. I mean, you've got kind of a special place for 3D platformers because you love Banjo, but I know that's typically something that's more people younger than us have nostalgia for.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's one of those things that if you take some old reviewer who's really more of a 16-bit person and you throw them this thing that's really, it's scratching that nostalgic for 3D platformer.
Sure. This is definitely of the PS1, PS2, N64 era.
I'm actually, I feel like if you grew up with 2D games, then you grew up through the era of 3D platformers and you fell in love with them almost immediately. Like I'm one of those people that Mario 64 was one of the most defining games I ever played.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're younger, it kind of boomerangs back, and you had like 10 or 15 years growing up where 3D platformers weren't really a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like post N64 era, when those things started to die out, if you grew up with like, you know, PS2, and pretty much everything on
Psychonauts
from
was
there.
pretty much the last one, and that was a sort of a critical, not a critical success, a commercial failure.
No, we've talked about this on the show, but like the kind of modern kids 3D platformers, it's like Lego games and Disney Infinity Skylanders and stuff like that,
which
so
are
there's
less
almost,
sort of like puzzly collectathon-y.
right? But it's like it's going into this like what is it?
Yeah.
It's not really an open world game.
Sure.
It's not really like a twitchy platformer.
It's
that's
not really
about,
a
like,
puzzle game per
tightness.
se.
Yeah. So it's you kind of have to understand what it's attempting to do to understand whether or not it's doing it well.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, right? Because when you look at what it is and you're like, oh, it's a sandbox. You're like, oh, so it's like GTA,
Right.
or Breath of the Wild, or Horizon. It's like, well, no, because you're severely limited in the amount of things you can do within that space.
I mean, it's a weird. It's almost like scratching like a smoker's itch of there is a shiny thing and I want to grab it.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a satisfaction you get from being like, oh, there's 10 shiny things and I'm going to get that one, and then I'm going to jump up there and get that one, and then jump down here and get that one. And if that sounds bad to you, collectathons aren't for you.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
and I think there's a breaking point with that too. Like if you go back to Rare was making these all the time, and obviously Yooka-Laylee is heavily inspired by the work of their their early work on the N64. Not their early work. Their early work goes back to like Jetpack. Which is like a 4-bit game.
Yeah.
But like I just 100%ed Snake Pass, which is a game we've been talking about a lot here at IGN, because it's weird and it's interesting and it's cool. But I was like, why did I really lock into this one?
Yeah.
It's 15 stages. Each stage has about 28 collectibles. There's like 20 blue orbs, there's 5 gold coins, and there's 3 like special gems.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need any of these.
Yeah, of course.
None of them actually give me anything.
Yeah.
Almost there's really no reason to even do it than to be like, I don't like finishing a level and having that hollow point where a thing should be. So I'm compelled to do it. And because tonally it's laid back, it's relaxed, it's charming, it's fun, it's sort of like there's some funky music going on. So with Yooka-Laylee, I'm kind of looking for the same type of experience.
It is very similar.
Yeah.
And it has, like you said, I felt like I was started off kind of negative on the game. I think the levels at work are gorgeous and vibrant and colorful, and the characters are dripping with personality. The writing's really funny and like really sharp and clever.
Is it kind of a like? Does it teeter sort of towards adulty stuff?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, you get your moves from this like weird drug dealer of a snake named Trouser.
Oh,
so you just
the
get
Trouser
moves,
Snake, right?
Trouser Snake.
And there's cool cameos like Shovel Knight's.
Yeah,
in it.
Shovel Knight's in it, and he'll make like he's making observations about how he feels weird being 3D, and you can like what? Just deal with it, dude.
They even use the same font that the old Rare games used to use. Like, there's a lot of really cute nods.
The music's great. I mean, just like Snake Pass, it was David Wise and Grant Kirkhope, which is definitely that.
Well, it's also funny because it's such a kind of an adolescent genre that like the late N64 kind of early 3D platformer stuff, because it comes right between that 16-bit golden age of platforming Metroidvania stuff and GTA 3 and early sandbox things when it was kind of people really had a handle on that. So I mean, I wonder if people are also like with collecting stuff now. When you think like collectathon, I mean, I think like a Ubisoft game,
sure, totally.
Where and it's more like here are 5 different verticals of types of things to do.
Yeah,
it's not just a shiny thing in the distance; it's a specific shiny thing on your map, and there's a story that kind of comes with that.
Right, and Ratchet and Clank had some collectibles, but not a ton.
Yeah, Ratchet and Clank,
but they also worked
a lot
towards
of them fed into currency, and it was like, oh, I want to buy this awesome weapon. Whereas with this, like, I hit a point where I got enough of the collectibles in order to unlock the final boss. And I was like, well, I still want to go back and get the rest of them, even though they aren't doing anything for me. Like you said, the Snake Pass thing. Like, I have no reason to do this except for I get satisfaction out of being like, oh, there it is.
Like it makes you drill down into the like weird, compelling psychology that makes us do everything when we play video games. Like, why get trophies? They don't do anything for you, but
do
it
this
feels
at all.
good. Yeah, why do anything? Let's just leave.
This isn't real one bit.
Yeah,
let's read.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's all weird little chemicals in your brain, just little tiny bits just trickling out when you.
So I don't want to put I don't want to put these two games on the same level, but between this and Mighty Number 9, and again, not trying to put these on the same level, but do you think it's sort of like there need to be like a Kickstarter game like polish committee, like a third party that can come in and sort of like that can look at stuff like this? Because I mean, obviously,
that's a pretty big stretch tier. It depends on how much they make.
Well, right. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I think that if you look at games of this scope that fall under Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, they kind of have that umbrella where someone like can come in and go, well, this is what needs to change.
A smell test.
Yeah. And that's not to say that all indie games have problems and then it's impossible to launch a successful, polished indie game without the help of one of the big three.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Double Fine crowdfunded Broken Age, and that was one of my favorite games of the year. It came out.
Totally. Like there's success stories, but I think it's interesting because it's like all the money in the world could still get you in a spot where you're like, the camera's stuck.
Well, I think that all the money in the world is almost just detrimental after a certain point because it's expectations and it's hype and it's attention, and it's almost like it'll kind of bolster. I think it'll bolster devs into trying more and doing more, and like maybe what started off as like a really just a quaint little small realistic thing, becomes like this. Oh wow, I've got to please all these people. All these people are expecting this, and this, and maybe you're hyping up. You want to get. Get that momentum going, get people backing it further, and it's like, oh, if you back us past this number, we'll put it on. Wonder Swan color, and it's like, but really, are you going to do that?
You're going to please 5 people.
I think the Kickstarting thing is tough, man.
Yeah, it's very tough. And I mean, you look at games that have been. Also it's a kind of accountability because like when money is not coming from some mysterious like is it? I mean. I don't know where the money for Hotline Miami came from. Like those guys, I mean, they made that game and they released that game and it's a fantastic game. Yeah. And I'm just using that as an example because like they weren't on Kickstarter, they weren't crowdfunded. So it's almost like a surprise when you're like, oh, great. And it's like, maybe that was 2 mortgages. I don't know.
Well, I mean, look at it. We just talked about Insomniac Spider-Man, right? Yeah. What's the budget for that game?
A lot. Yeah. But it's not, there's not a forward-facing number.
Yeah. When's it out?
Yeah, exactly.
How much money have you given them?
Yeah.
None. Yeah. So you can't like, with Yooka-Laylee, if I gave them $50, I'd be like, where's my game?
Yeah.
Like I paid you $50 3 years ago. Like I want my damn game. Also, so I think that part of that is also sort of, there's that little hum in the back of their ear constantly of like, oh, we got to get this out there. We got to please all these people.
Yeah.
And I think it, obviously they're still locking in on the artistry that they want to lock in on, but eventually you're going to go like, we got to make something for these people that paid us. Sure. Whereas Insomniac Spider-Man, I mean, I have nothing but hope for that game, but I'm not financially invested.
There's also the fact that you are seeing the money. Like there's a big amount with a dollar sign. Like what was Broken Age made? What that was like 6 million?
I think it was 3.5 million. 3.5 million, which was like record breaking at the time.
Which is record breaking, but still laughable for the budget of a game. That's like nothing for a game of that scale.
Well, and a lot of the the stretch goals were like, we're going to send you a bunch of physical things, and they were like, oh my god, so much of the money is going to these physically shipping shirts and posters.
Yeah, I mean, quick anecdote, but Max and I did Kickstarter for the Comedy Button in 2011, and one of our things were like, we're going to send T-shirts to everyone, and we burned through half our money mailing out T-shirts and postcards. So you don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that it looks good as you're doing it. Mighty Number 9, we talked about this on Up at Noon recently, has yet to mail out a majority of their physical rewards.
Andrew has his
no, he backed that game at a very high tier.
Like $100 or something.
It's $100. He got straight up robbed. The 3DS and Vita versions aren't even out yet. Not a word on them since last year. I mean, this is
definitely not one of those scenarios. And
no.
Playtonic was good with like they had backers could play the toy box, which was just like a free like, hey, this is just like
I think they handled that so well.
I would say they've definitely been like them and Double Fine have handled the crowdfunding a game from start to finish and like hitting deadlines and milestones and really just keeping people involved in what's going on. They're definitely in the right. So I mean, it's it's a bummer this is getting some bad scores or whatever, but it sounds like it's a decent game and it's out there in the wild. So
and this is again, there's like we're right at the precipice of we're getting stuff like A Hat in Time, Psychonauts 2. Later on in the year, they're releasing the 4 Jack games on PS2 classics on PS4. I guess Jack 1 is the only one that's like a traditional character platformer because then it just becomes GTA.
Yeah.
Then it becomes like a Mad Max racing game.
So my question to you guys is like Yooka-Laylee was kickstarted. How does Yooka-Laylee 2 get made? Like is that possible? Can you go? So we don't really see sequels to Kickstarter games.
That's a really good question. I wonder
like,
maybe
do you go back to the
in a perfect world, Microsoft is like, here's Banjo. Make Banjo 3.
Yeah.
And Banjo meets Banjo cross Yooka.
That would be cool. On the other hand, maybe they track which platform it sells best on and they approach
that first party. Maybe they approach like, Sony or like Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, Nintendo being like, oh, Yooka-Laylee 2 is a Switch exclusive. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it just seems odd because you can't go back to your backers and be like, hey, if you like this, we're going to give you another one, but we need another $400 million. Like it's a lot of money. So I don't know. I'm interested to see now that Kickstarted games are starting to release. I'm interested to see how that landscape changes. If it's something people start to do more of or less of. Because for every success, there's 100 like burns, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if we ever see Kickstarted sequels, it'd be interesting.
right.
sequels to Kickstarted games.
So speaking of things that people pay money for, here's something that if you're a PlayStation Plus member, you don't have to. Drawn to Death is finally out in the wild. This is, of course, David Jaffe's weird, angry teenage trapper keeper drawing game where it's like it's an arena shooter, but everything looks like it's drawn in notebook paper, which is great.
I've really come around. Like, I thought it was garish at first, and I've really come around to it. I'm like, all right, you look different than anything else, so I'm kind of on board.
I will applaud it just up and down for not looking like a video game I've seen before.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's smart. Yeah, released for free for anyone, launched for free for anyone who has PlayStation Plus, which is part of the reason Rocket League got so big was because of that.
Yeah, we were going to play it and get some actual feedback on what it's like, but it's still having server maintenance for the next 14 minutes.
They were having server maintenance, and then there was a PSN update where the PSN was down last night. So between that, Persona launching and this game coming out around the same time, like, I don't know, like, maybe don't do like highway construction during rush hour. You know?
Yeah.
Like maybe do it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's one of those, like, that's really annoying in the moment, and then a week from now, no one's going to remember that.
It's totally fine.
But yeah, it's cool.
This is not like when Greg and Colin hosted Beyond and they had that like 3 months where PSN was down.
Yeah, their hunger
We had an
strike.
article on IGN that was literally, it just said, is PSN currently down? If you clicked on it, there'd be a big bold thing that said yes.
Yeah.
And after 3 months, we updated it and it was like, no, it's back. And everyone gets Wipeout for free.
Dark times. Man.
Yep. Oh, real quick side note. We were talking about the Nintendo Switch store the other day and like the way it lists the storefront. And it got me looking at, I was like, yeah, it's a pretty bare bones store. But what did the PlayStation 3 store look like? And I pulled up a video on YouTube of what the PS3 storefront looked like when it launched. Yeah. And I urge you all listening to the show to go watch that. Every time you're on PSN and you're on PS4 and you're trying to buy something digitally or on your Vita and it hangs for a second, it doesn't really work, or like you get annoyed by something, go watch a video of what that used to look like. Holy crap.
Yeah, you think that's crazy? Check out the PlayStation 2 store.
Oh God, yeah.
Was there one?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
It was called Babbage's.
Yeah, you could use a 56K modem to play SOCOM or whatever.
I did that a lot.
It's so cool to see. I really think we should put together a retrospective of just like all the different OSs and storefronts and stuff like that.
No, that's funny though. We're also I was trying to download Drawn to Death, and it's a little bit, I know there's a lot of weird business and like product placement and stuff floating around, but it really sucks that like here's a game we've known about for a while that is available today, and going on the PlayStation Store and being like, all right, time to get it. Where is it?
Yeah.
And I'm going through all these different menus, and it's like, what's hot? What's new? And it's the greatest for PS4. And I'm like,
what do they want you to
like,
pre-order?
3 of them are for Destiny 2, and it's like 10% off Ghost in the Shell on digital pre-order demand. And I'm like, it's in theaters still. Stop.
Yeah, but it'll be on digital next week.
Yeah, that's true.
At this rate. No, I was I've been a PlayStation Plus subscriber since that's a thing you could do. And every single month I go to download my new PlayStation Plus games, some really cool ones this month. And the first thing I'm prompted with is all these massive subscribe buttons and pay this much money.
It should know that I do this. Like,
it's like
I have a subscription. You can remove that.
It's like showing me a movie trailer when I'm already in that movie.
Yeah,
like
you
don't
sold me
have
on
to
it.
do that.
Yeah,
like give me the games I can download. Also, while we're just complaining about PlayStation Plus, every single month there's a couple of cross-platform games that they push on the Vita storefront that are playable on PS4, but you wouldn't know that until you manually type them in.
I mean,
with that stupid vertical.
You should be able to. I get that they want you to enter the store, but you should be able to like
view everything.
Opt into a thing where like, hey, the second these are available, just start automatically downloading any of the free games.
Yeah,
so I'm obviously going to want them. I'll delete them if I don't.
Or not even download.
An extra $60 a year.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to download them. You can just add them to your library.
Yeah.
So once they become synced with your library, you
own them.
Essentially own them forever, right? So or as long as you
can never get rid of them.
You can never get rid of them. They're yours. Yeah, I have a couple of games in there. I was just like, I would actually love an ability to curate that list a little bit.
I always laugh at that. Like you played the game for a little bit, so you're always going to have 0% trophies, and I kind of want anyone to know I played.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I have so many games like that because we'll do.
It's like a bad kill death ratio.
Oh, you'll do an Up at Noon Let's Play.
We'll do Up at Noon Let's Plays, which are roughly 5 minutes long, and we'll only get a few minutes in, and then forever I'm just like it's there. Yeah. But no, I really wish they just sort of took that PlayStation Plus homepage on PSN on your PS4, and they changed it. They moved things around. They actually like curated it a little bit, and they said like, here's everything you can get this month. Show me everything even I can get on PS3, even though my PS3 is long gone.
Yeah,
just show me like what this month looks like. You know, so I can paint a picture.
Cool.
Of what it's like.
I wish that they just kind of like maybe they understood that I will continue to buy the things. They don't have to just beat me over the head with advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a thing I've hated since I was like on 360. But the fact that it's like, hey, here's a service I'm paying for that's still riddled with ads.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the thing is like if you go into like a GameStop and you're inundated with the same amount of advertisements and information, but you can just gloss your eyes over them. Whereas with this, you have to manually hit a button and be like, get away from me.
Yeah, I'm weirdly okay with the deals and advertisements that pertain to digital media based on like the stuff that we would all like.
Yeah.
But when it's like a Mountain Dew sponsorship and they're like, do not miss these deals, I'm like, get out of my fucking face. Sorry.
Anyway,
that's the anger. That's where the anger comes
That
from.
was it. That was it.
That's our
pun I just invented that they never wrote themselves.
our big old cussy word for the day. So
Put the turd emoji over my mouth.
Nier Automata has been out for what, like a week? Some change? A
couple weeks.
Couple
Yeah,
weeks. Somebody tweeted me, I think over the weekend, was like, hey, have you guys talked about this? And it's like, why not? And I'm like, we talked about it for a second, I think.
Yeah.
Megan Sullivan reviewed it for IGN. She loved it.
It was so good.
Everyone loves it.
Yeah.
You played a bit of it?
Yeah, I've been playing a bit. I want to play a lot more, and I think once Yooka-Laylee is off my plate, Horizon's off my plate.
Short answer, why haven't we talked about it more? Because it's coming out in the midst of Mass Effect, Zelda, Horizon, Persona. Just, It's the sequel to a game that I think the people who played it loved it, and a lot of people didn't play it. So
I really want to play it.
One of the comparisons was this is a third-person Japanese WarioWare game because the game keeps changing genres. Like it becomes, it's
Are
like
you
goes from,
implying
like,
WarioWare wasn't Japanese?
no, he's Italian or like some weird Eastern European thing. I don't know.
That's probably the most Japanese game I've ever
It's probably
played.
Eastern European, right?
Yeah.
But no, in terms of like the game,
He's got that Russian drunkard's nose.
the game will immediately.
purple
But it's weird,
disease.
and he's like a biker now. Yeah, I don't know when that
He
happened.
farts on men.
Yeah. But Nier will go from being like a third-person shmup to all of a sudden it's a platformer to all of a sudden it's like a Bayonetta-style action game.
It's awesome.
And it's a game that you have to beat like 7 times to get all the endings, but apparently the endings are amazing. Like Patrick Klepek was talking about how it's his favorite game of the year.
It sounds like something Patrick Klepek does every
that's
2
true.
weeks.
Yeah.
Here's a game no one's playing. Let me tell you why it's the best game
why
this
it's the
year,
greatest thing
this
ever.
week.
I love that dude.
But yeah, they announced that the digital sales and total shipments have topped 1 million worldwide, which is like a weird sort of nebulous, like, whoa, where are these?
Million's a big number.
Millions.
Unless it's not, in which case I don't know what is.
But no, that's a huge number for this game. That's
Well, it's like being like, we have 1 million apples. 2 of them are in the store and the rest are on the trees.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
No, usually you get shipped or sold. For the longest time, Sony only said shipped because they were embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like during the it was the PS3 era, coming off of the success of the PS2 after Ken Kutaragi was basically just like, we don't even have to make games. We'll sell 1 million of these things. It could be $1,000. There's a crab. Go to hell. that didn't work.
Yeah.
That didn't pan out. People bought the 360 instead. And for a while there, they were like, we've shipped over 500 million. And it's like, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
It
they
means
can
you
all
sent it
go to
us.
that place where like the Ark of the Covenant is.
Yeah. It's like there's a bunch of rotten milk on the shelves.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So this is an odd one because then in the last few years, Sony's actually shifted over to sold.
Oh yeah,
'Cause
for like
they're-
Uncharted and Horizon, obviously.
Yeah, and they're very, very proud of those numbers, and justifiably so because they've been selling really, really well. There's a great attach rate on the PS4, especially for first-party stuff. So for this to sort of be like shipped and sold, and I know part of that is that weird nebulous area we're in now where like digital sales aren't reported by NPD. Neither are like some Walmarts. Like all that is a disaster, by the way. Like it really sucks that you can't just be like,
This is how many copies of this thing was sold.
like what did this do?
I mean, that's the thing,
if
it's like,
you work at Walmart and you work with that guy whose job it is to count the games that sold, you wake him up because he's not doing it at
but
some
I mean,
other
like movies, we wake up every Monday morning and it's like, oh, Ghost in the Shell made $19 million and Baby Daddy Boss or whatever. Made
Also,
$1 million,
and they'll do the thing where they kind of fudge the numbers. They're like, this is a record breaking this is the 3rd week in March, the highest grossing movie ever released that week this year, and you're like, what?
Well, yeah,
Well, it was like Rob Schneider's The Animal was like the #1 comedy in America, and it's like, hey, there's no other comedies out.
yeah.
Like
The
of course it
5th
is.
highest grossing R-rated X-Men movie. What?
yeah.
The world's greatest movie where Rob Schneider becomes the animal.
Is that what happens in the movie?
Yeah. He tries to date a girl at a pet shop, and then he becomes an animal. It sucks.
I imagine.
What else do you need to know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, $1 million. Regardless, we're making fun of the number.
It's awesome.
$1 million is
It's
huge
awesome.
for a niche game developed by Platinum, like who runs relatively lean.
Deuce Manimal male animal. I'm sorry. I just want to see more Rob Schneider animal movies.
No, we're good.
Paul Block, Mohawk. All right, thanks for bearing with us.
All right, yeah.
It's an animal. Yeah, no, it's good. It's definitely good news because it's a weird ass game, right?
Paul Block Mohawk.
Someone's gonna Photoshop that now. No, I think it's a great celebration of just weirdness, and I think that's important. As you can see by the last few minutes, we love weird stuff.
And the creator is that dude who wears like the scary moon on his head. And he's like, his quotes are, they're always like, why do you only wear a moon on your head? And those are your faces. He's like, well, if like the artist behind some of your favorite hentai, if you saw his face, you'd start thinking about him and not the hentai. So that's what I'm doing. Like, that's like his quote.
Like what?
And I'm like, all right, that's interesting.
That's why I love. I will never stop. Like I will quit working in this industry and playing video games if Japan it becomes a non-existent part of the story here.
Yeah,
because like when you can't see a Street Fighter trailer without it cutting to like Yoshinoro Ono being like, I bring this little Blanca with me all over the world through the TSA and back. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like that part of that heritage of the way video games started weird and continue to go weird. And the fact that these things are selling well, that Neo sold well. It's not really a weird game, but it's got some weird ass shit in it.
Yeah, it's super weird. Yeah.
Sorry, cursed again.
You do. They got to go in and digitally remove the words.
Do
from your mouth.
not.
No, I love that. We have people in the comments who are like, "You're not respecting the culture," and it's like, dude, you don't need to white knight Japan. They're fine. They're cool. And it's also, I'm sure it's just as weird on this end. You know, like if you look at like we have monster truck rallies.
Yeah,
we make trucks fight. They're real weird. I mean, like,
weird as hell.
but that's the thing is like I want to just quick aside. Like, I love that. Like, I've been to a bunch of places around the world, and it's like really disappointing when you're like, oh, well, there's like a Burger King, or like there's a thing I'm familiar with, and it's like, oh, I don't get to use funny foreign money. I just use a card. It's like that kind of that homogenization of like global society is like kind of a bummer. So for Japan to be like, oh yeah, we got a hamburger that we put sharks on or whatever. You're like, we made a black
I saw a
cheeseburger.
developer the other day tweeted out, hey, if you're working on a video game, like you're an indie dev, I don't know if you guys saw this, respond and like show off some videos or clips or images of what your game looks like.
Yeah.
And hundreds of people responded. Hundreds of different game developers all over the world making weird ass games. And the diversity in which that level of creation is happening right now is stunning, admirable, exciting, optimistic. It's so damn cool. Yeah. And I don't ever want that to go away because I think there was like a couple years there where I thought like video games are just going to be just sort of like like dirty like Gears of War looking.
It's going to be either like puzzle clicker or it's going to be Warfighter.
Yeah. And it's not.
No,
things
you look at our 10 Game of the Year nominees every year, and it's like, oh, this is a game about an existential crisis where you move lines across an island.
Yeah.
This is an arena character shooter.
I haven't played any of Nier. I don't know what the hell it is, but I'm really happy that this strange moon-faced man's game is doing well, and that maybe there'll be more of them. You know, I'm glad that people are buying these things.
Me too.
It's co-developed by Platinum, and after Scalebound's cancellation and some crappy license games, you're like, I really want Platinum to do well.
Yeah, they need to win.
I don't want them to go away.
I don't ever want them to go away.
So speaking of weird Japanese stuff, Persona comes out today. If you want to talk about Persona, check out last week's episode. We went very deep on Persona. I'm playing it right now. I'm about 10 hours in. I like this game. It's really cool.
You better not stream this game, though.
But yeah,
Max, what if I want to stream over 90 minutes of this game consecutively?
Well, Atlas released a statement about people streaming the game or uploading, capture footage. This being a Japanese title with a single playthrough story means our masters in Japan are very wary about it. Sharing is currently blocked through the native PS4 UI. However, if you do plan on streaming, video guidelines above apply except length. If you decide to stream past 7/7, this is like an in-game date, not the actual.
The game takes place over a year.
Yeah, you are only allowed to stream for the next 3 months. I highly recommend not doing this. You have been warned. That's in all caps in an official statement.
Yeah,
you do so at your own risk of being issued a content ID claim or worse, a channel strike, account suspension.
So I like the fact that Andrew's not here right now because him and Miranda are currently streaming 2 hours of this game. It'd be really funny if I got a content strike.
Oh,
I mean,
check out the next episode of Beyond in the county jail with Andy and Miranda.
Yeah, this goes in the same category as like
Nintendo does this.
yeah,
Yeah.
when they were. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, it's like you got your money. Like somebody bought the thing.
Also,
let
in
them play with it.
2017, like
This is
Switch
free
as a
marketing.
platform is
This
one of
is
the big
free
things.
marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
You should be paying these people.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
not, but I mean, it's just So
Also, if this is what you're worried about, make movies. Don't make video games.
Yeah.
Video games, I'm supposed to watch someone play it and go, that looks fun, I want to play it.
Yeah.
Like, I totally understand this. I'm sensitive to the idea of this is a story they worked very hard on, but it's out there in the wild now, man. Like, there's nothing
Been
you can
out there
do
for
about it.
6 months in the
Yeah. I mean,
wild.
if you're
That's the other
arguing-
thing.
Like if your solution to spoilers existing on the internet is to issue content ID strikes, you don't understand what the internet is, and you should not be allowed
Also,
to use it.
you know what people are going to do? They're going to get pissed at this, and then they're just going to spoil the
They're
movie
gonna spike
everywhere.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah,
be in
no,
like the comments section.
It was like that. What was that picture of Beyonce where she was like, "Please take this down," and they're like, "What? No, we're gonna make more of them."
No, it's the Streisand effect.
Yeah.
But also, I want to point out that maybe if people are just watching the entirety of the game and it's like there's this sense of they're almost like pirating the story.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to play the game, but if they like the story, there's still like an entire world of Persona merchandise out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe this will sell them on the next game.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll buy the anime. Like I don't know.
Or or buy the old games. Like there's so many other different channels there. But I think that like the most frustrating thing about all of this, regardless of the content guidelines and everything like that, is that it is natively blocked through the PS4 UI. Like that is ultimately a big FU to anybody that can't afford like an expensive capture kit. We have them here at work. A lot of YouTube streamers buy them, like Elgatos and stuff like that. But it's kind of ridiculous to expect the average gamer who bought this thing, who only gets a couple games a year, who's trying to build their Twitch channel, who's trying to build their YouTube presence, which you absolutely should be doing because that's an awesome thing. If there's a 1 in a million chance you can become rich and famous by streaming video games, do it. And if a game like this won't let you do it, play something else. Like that sucks.
And
it
also,
really
like,
pisses me
one
off.
of the coolest things IGN's made in the last couple of years has been Prepare to Try. If FromSoft was like, oh, you can't actually do that, that show wouldn't exist. And that's like one of the coolest things we've done.
And we saw the same thing with Breath of the Wild, right? Where Nintendo was content striking YouTubers, and it's like Breath of the Wild is the kind of game where I want to see like I want to see things that I didn't know I could do, and then I want to go home and try them myself. You know, like porn.
All right. Anyway, we got a bunch of email from you, our listeners.
Emails.
No, I mean seriously, like that kind of stuff. I mean, Persona is like a fairly like it's not super fun to watch, you know. Like, I mean, it's interesting, it's visually cool, but like, unlike Zelda, where you're like, oh, that guy tied a bunch of balloons to a raft and floated away, and then hypnotized the bokoblin or whatever.
When Andrew was playing through the game in Japanese, I would go over to his apartment and I would just get very drunk and I'd ask him a bunch of questions about the game that he just wouldn't be able to answer. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I don't know what's happening right here. Like, how is this our relationship with this game?
I did that great Let's Play with him when it was in Japanese and Goldfarb doesn't speak Japanese. And I was like, what do you think is happening through all of this? And then the game came out in English and I was like, were you right? And he's like, not at all.
No,
I love that.
Very wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the emails. We got one. Danny writes in, hi, I'm a longtime viewer, love the show podcast. Anyway, hear you guys talk about trophies you earn in games from time to time on the show. My question is, I would like to know what your first trophy was earned on PlayStation. Mine was on Super Stardust. You should add him on PSN. He's pre-crime 909. Yeah, he could use some friends on PS4. Yeah, Danny, thanks for writing. I tried to look this up online. I think the way there's that odd kind of intersection of like Sony Entertainment Network and then PlayStation Online, and that like I made something private, so I can't actually look at my own things. What is the first trophy you remember getting? Like,
so I bought my PS3 when Guns of the Patriots came out,
Right.
And I remember the first 3 games I had were that. I downloaded Pixel Junk Eden and I downloaded Flower. And I feel like Flower was the first game I played on my PS3 because I was like waiting for my roommate to get home to play Metal Gear. And so I would imagine it was whatever the first you
tried.
made love to a dandelion.
I think Flower was probably one of my first
Yeah,
ones too. Yeah. Pixel Junk Shooter came out later, right?
Yeah, it went Monsters, Eden, then Shooter.
Okay, because I remember that was one of the ones where I was like, that was one of the earlier games where I was like, I want to get all of
You were
these.
obsessed with it? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys go for platinums much or?
So my theory with those, with platinums is basically like if I'm really into a game and I find myself compelled to 100% it, I'll go for the platinum there because I'm already there already. I almost did it with Horizon and then Zelda came out and sidetracked me. But I think I was at like 88% in Horizon, and I was like, I can easily go back and 100% this and platinum this. But what always turns me off is when like the platinums are tied to weird, obscure multiplayer stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Which wasn't the case with Horizon.
Or there's that one like lingering like really hardcore thing where it's just like, who's this for? You gotta like leave your system on hold for 6 hours.
I feel like I've really cooled down on platinums and achievements since I got this job, just because like the nature of conversation here is you have to be sort of a jack of all trades. And obviously there's people like Andrew who'll just be like, I'll play 300 hours of Persona, but like
he said this morning on the way to get coffee that he's going to go try to get all 600 Korok seeds and 900 Korok seeds in Zelda. And I was like, dude, just don't. Like, please,
just go, don't.
like, play something else. Play anything else.
I like when you drop the stones on those men and they go, ah!
Yeah, that's good.
DJ Robin writes on episode 45.
DJ
I was waiting for that. On episode 45, you guys mentioned how many amazing titles are coming out this year and that the early quarter already has so many contenders for Game of the Year. However, I seem to remember the exact same thing being said this time last year after a disappointing ending to 2016 for more reasons or one side. Do you guys think that February is the new November for great new releases? And do you think Brian will mind if I use Misanthrope Song from... We'll come back to that. But yeah, is February the new November?
No, I just think February becomes that because a lot of games, the cans get kicked down the road a little bit and pushed. But like you look at this fall, like between Call of Duty, Battlefield, Red Dead, Destiny, first party games we don't know about, whatever Ubisoft's working on, Mario, like this fall I think is going to be just fine.
I like to think that I said this earlier, I really hope that publishers are just looking at the success of games that had like not a super long tail on them leading into them, and just maybe it's like games that were possibly slated for release earlier this year or late last year, they're just like, let's just give it more time in the oven and make sure that we're serving it when it's piping hot, you know? And
I love like, seeing Resident Evil 7 at E3 last year, and then all of a sudden the game was out in 6-7 months.
That was awesome. That was great.
Yeah, game's great. Same thing with Watch Dogs.
Well, it's also we as consumers are continuing to reward publishers and developers for releasing games in sort of off-peak hours. If you look at the first few months of this year, the running theme is that Resident Evil sold really well, Neo sold well, Nier sold well, Horizon sold phenomenal. These are games that are like, they're going to have good, like sort of, they're going to have legs, but it's also like, historically you would have been like, you're sending this thing out to die. And gamers are like, no, we want something to play right now. We're going to sell 1 million of this thing.
It goes both ways. It's not just with games; it's with just media in
movies
general.
too.
I mean, we see like Deadpool is the highest-grossing R-rated movie, and it released in. It was a Valentine's Day movie, you know, and they totally
Get Out made it's the highest grossing original screenplay.
Yeah, like February's usually like dead zone for movies. And you think like either like summer tentpole blockbusters or wintertime. Basically, either if it's too hot or too cold out, people go to the movies. But I think there's kind of increasingly like, and maybe it's the fact that people are constantly online and you can market things more directly like that. But
absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, DJ's second question was, Brian, would you mind if I used a Misanthrope song in my podcast? If you don't know, Brian is a wonderful musician. He does the theme song to Beyond, and he has a couple albums out. There's Robotobots and Misanthrope. You should go check those out.
Thanks, Max. You can use my music.
Just be ready for a copyright strike.
I'm not going to do that.
Don't use it past July 7th.
You can only use 90 minutes of it. I'm kidding. The album's 35 minutes long. You can only use it 3 times in a row. Feel free to use anything you want. I was talking with some friends, you guys, about like maybe putting together a music project of music specifically for streamers and YouTubers and creators out there who want more theme songs that aren't just killer tracks garbage. So more word on that soon. But for now, if you want to use Misanthrope for anything, do it. Just send me a link to it so I can check it out and maybe plug it.
Yeah, cool. Charles writes, hi Beyond Crew, I'm a longtime listener. However, I only just bought myself a PlayStation 4 back in February to play Horizon Zero Dawn. I absolutely loved that game. Now that I have a PS4, I am tempted to check out Persona 5. I've never played a Persona game, but after reading Goldfarb's glowing review, I am seriously considering this purchase. However, and here's the question, I still find myself hesitant to get it because of the turn-based combat. I have enjoyed games like XCOM, but sometimes this type of combat mechanic can break the flow of narrative for me. It can feel like a roadblock or unnecessary filler to arbitrarily extend the length of the game. Is this the case for Persona 5? Would love to hear your thoughts.
I wish I had an answer for this guy because this is good. I'm about to start this game. It's my first one.
I mostly hate turn-based games. XCOM was one of the ones that totally like changed my mind on that.
Right.
But when I think turn-based, I usually picture kind of like 16-bit Final Fantasy.
Sure. Where like the good guys line up here, the bad guys line up here.
And most
They
of
all
the time
wait
it's,
to punch
it's
each
like,
other.
yeah, it's like
a weird middle school dance.
Yeah, and it's like a different colored goblin you saw from the first time you saw him. And
Yep.
then maybe after a dozen hours, you get like a cool new gradient effect to go across the screen and numbers fly out. Persona's like, I would say, really good at keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
There's stuff that comes into play like where your characters are placed, and I'm like super early in the game too.
right.
It also, if you're just kind of like getting through a dungeon, basically you have this option to use like a kind of second sight. So if there's also like a weird stealth mechanic.
Yeah, there's like back attacks where
But you can also basically scan an enemy and be like, oh, are they higher level than me? Are they lower level than me? And if they're like super low level and you just want to get through it, there is like a fast forward thing. So I would say in terms of it being a turn-based game, it is very respectful of the player's time.
it has such a like constant forward-moving energy to it in terms of scene transitions, the flow of combat, what happens after you win a battle. This isn't like you get to an enemy, load screen, battle, load screen.
I would
out.
say
You're like,
that beating just a bunch of random garbage enemies in
Yeah.
Persona has like the same level of triumph when you finish it, where you're just like, I just kicked some ass, as like the original Final Fantasy fanfare. Where
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's like that, but you're like, whoa, I just
kids
banged
are
out
cool.
pretty
Yeah,
much. Like,
yeah.
we're all like, let's go have a cigarette out back. We're doing kicking some ass here. But yeah, so it's I would say give it a shot, or maybe if you can check out some Let's Plays of it.
but don't open them up in an incognito window, or else Atlas is going to
Exactly. Yeah.
I never use this service, but seriously, like Redbox or something like that, GameFly is one of those things that you can just kind of like spend $5, take it home for the night, give it a spin, see if you like it. If not, go back out there. I mean, if you just got a PS4, I can give you a laundry list of great games.
But I mean,
to play,
also like if you like watch, Andrew and Miranda, who are two Persona experts in the office, just stream 2 hours of it. Like watch that, and if you're not obviously not playing it, but if that pace and flow is appealing to you and not a roadblock, then 100% jump in.
Yeah, no, because I'm like, I totally feel you, Charles. Like I'm in the exact same position where like I see a game like this get scores the way it's getting, and I'm like, I can't ignore this.
Yeah.
Like it is part of my DNA to
And
be
it will
like,
be
I
at
should
the end
pay
of the year.
attention.
We're going to have to be talking about this for Game of the Year
Totally.
stuff.
Yeah. And like what really pushed me on it was not necessarily just the number next to it, that it got a 9.7 out of 10 on IGN, but it was like talking to you guys and realizing like, oh, there might be some stuff in there.
Yeah.
Although half of my friends were like, you're going to hate it. So yeah, that's another reason to check it out.
Yeah,
So.
that's what terrifies me about digital games, is just the fact that you are flat out $60 if you buy something digitally. And it's like you don't have anything in your house, but you also don't have anything to like sell to a friend or return, trade in, whatever, So having that level of like, how do you
I had that happen with
something?
with Overwatch. Everyone was going nuts over it. I bought it digitally on PS4. I'm like, I'm gonna get in this, play with all my friends. Just didn't click with me.
Yeah,
like
I was the same way.
Totally understand how great that game is. I understand why that people have been playing it for years, and why people love it. But for me personally, it was just like no. And then I was like, oh, I just delete the save file now. Like I couldn't trade it in. I couldn't give it to a friend.
Yeah,
Like,
you can't give it to some kid you don't even want but you just think you should have a game, Like
sucks. There's this kid I hate that lives outside of my house, and he's like, "Where's that goddamn Overwatch?"
maybe if you had Overwatch, you wouldn't be always hanging out in your yard messing up your stuff.
No, it's actually they're like feral cats. If you feed them games, they'll come back every day.
No, they'll come back. It depends on the length of the game. You give him Persona, he'll be gone for like a solid 3 weeks.
That's true.
It's a big 90-hour game. Anyway, this is Beyond. We do this every week. We also do a bunch of other IGN podcasts that you should check out. There is, of course, the Xbox one, which is Unlocked.
Yeah.
You do that with Alana and McCaffrey. And then there's NVC, which you're on pretty much every week, Brian.
Yeah, NVC's having its biggest month in the history of the show.
It's almost like a new Nintendo
download-wise.
console just came out.
Yeah, something
crazy.
like that. So if you want to hear us talk about, we're going to do a Zelda spoiler cast pretty soon. Just kind of geeking out about the stuff on Switch, more like the little indie games that are coming out here and there. But just like every week, we try to bring in friends. We should get you on soon, Max.
Yeah, I'd love to. I have a Nintendo console now. So
That's true.
Works, yeah.
Just to talk about the cool stuff we're playing there. And then you and I do Up at Noon every single week, which we're immensely proud of. That's our weekly comedy variety show here on IGN. It streams live on Twitch, YouTube, and IGN, 12 Pacific time on Thursdays. And we bring people like Marty on here and there. We bring Goldfarb on. We bring our
did
friends.
a segment. It's what's it like to have fleas, and Marty came on and talked about that.
Yeah,
We did
that's
this-
why I got my hair shorns.
Yeah, we got.
Sometimes we get special guests like Rob Schneider to talk about,
I think you're officially never going to be able to get him on.
Deuce Balligator, male alligator.
No, I mean, you've heard us talk about Persona on the show in great length with Andrew Goldfarb, but have you heard us make fun of Andrew Goldfarb for how different his high school experience was? than the game Persona. You can hear all that and more on shows like Up at Noon.
Yeah.
So come check that out.
But if you're looking for more stuff to listen to audio-wise, just poke around on iTunes or the Amazon store or whatever. IGN's
Subscribe,
got a whole stable of...
leave a nice review, say something nice about us.
Yeah, subscribe to
cool.
Beyond. Like, it's hard to say, like, even if you don't actually do anything with that and you do it on your dad's computer, subscribe, get those numbers up, leave a nice comment.
Yeah, go down to the Apple store and subscribe all those free iPads.
That's a great idea. We can get dozens of new fake listeners.
Yeah, totally. And if you can't tell, they sent out a company-wide email about how we should optimize our numbers in the podcast department.
That's right. Now we're just trying to get the #1 PlayStation podcast title back.
Yeah.
Any day now.
Anyway, this is Beyond. You can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. You're Agent Bizzle, and you're McBeatty with 2 G's and 2 T's. And you can email us. It's just beyond@ign.com. And that's it. That's the show. That's it. We're all done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
The end.
All block, mall hawk.
Scraw.